I can fix it.
All
If
right.
that's all you
Go
want
ahead,
to do.
step out of the car.
Why?
Because you're under arrest. Step
No,
out.
I'm not.
Step out of the vehicle.
No, I'm not.
Step out.
No.
Step out. I'm giving you a lawful order. Step out. Get out of the car.
I am not. You better leave me.
Put your hands behind your back.
Leave me alone.
Put your hands behind your back.
No.
Now.
I said leave me alone. I mean it. Leave me alone.
Put your hands behind your back.
The officer stood inches from the open car door and held the ticket pad up like a final order. Sign here, he said. It's $80. The woman did not move her hand. She was 65 years old. Her name was Margaret Lewis. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her hands rested on the steering wheel. The engine was off. The red and blue lights bounced across the street and the windows of nearby houses. I don't agree, she said. I want to read it. The officer's jaw tightened. His name was Officer Daniel Hargrove. He wore a body camera on his chest. The camera blinked red. You can read it after you sign, he said. Sign now. Margaret shook her head once. Slowly. I'm not refusing, she said. I'm asking for time. The officer stepped closer. His shadow crossed her lap. A second cruiser rolled up behind the first. A neighbor across the street opened the door and stood still. Ma'am, the officer said louder, if you do not sign, you are resisting. Margaret stayed still. The officer reached for her wrist. That was the moment everything tipped. That was a moment people would later point to and argue about. That was a moment that would end in a lawsuit with a $5 million bond. Years later, the body camera caught the sound of fabric pulling tight. A pen fell to the ground. Someone shouted, "Don't touch her." The officer said, "Stop resisting." Margaret said, "I am not resisting." The second officer moved in. The camera shook. The screen went dark for a half-second. What happened next was split opinions. Pull records from the past, and open doors that had been closed for a long time. But before any of that, there was a quiet morning, a small street, and an old woman driving to the grocery store. Margaret Lewis lived on Juniper Ridge Drive in Cedar Falls, Ohio. The street had trees on both sides and cracked sidewalks that had been there for decades. Most houses were one story. Most people had lived there a long time. Margaret had lived there for 23 years. She woke up at 6:30 every morning. She made oatmeal. She drank tea. She watered the plants on her back porch. On Tuesdays, she drove to the grocery store before the traffic picked up. That morning was a Tuesday. Margaret put on her seatbelt. She checked her mirrors. She backed out slowly. Her car was a silver sedan with faded paint on the roof. At the corner of Juniper Ridge and East Maple, she slowed down. There was a stop sign partly covered by a tree branch. She stopped, counted to 2, and turned right. 2 blocks later, she saw the lights. She pulled over right away. Officer Daniel Hargrove had been on patrol for 6 years. He started his shift at 7 a.m. He drove the same route most mornings. He wrote tickets when he saw a reason. That morning, he said he saw a rolling stop. He parked behind Margaret's car and turned on his lights. He walked up on the driver's side. He rested one hand near his belt. License and registration, he said. Margaret gave them to him. Do you know why I stopped you? He asked. No, she said. You didn't fully stop at the sign, he said. I did stop, she said. Maybe not long enough. Subscribe to stay updated. Share to keep others safe. And comment where you're watching from. He went back to his cruiser. Margaret waited. She watched the jogger pass by. She watched the school bus turn the corner. Officer Hargrove came back with a ticket. $80, he said. Sign here. Margaret looked at the paper. The print was small. What does the signature mean? She asked. It means you got it, he said. Not that you agree. I want to read it, she said. You can read it after, he said. Margaret adjusted her glasses. She leaned forward. The officer held the pad higher. Sign now, he said. This was the low moment, the quiet part, the part that does not make headlines. Margaret had always believed in rules. She had worked as a school librarian for 30 years. She had told children to use inside voices and to return books on time. She also believed in understanding what she signed. "I'm not refusing," she said again. "I just want to read it." Officer Hargrove looked at his watch. "Ma'am," he said, "this is simple." A car slowed down behind the cruiser. Another driver honked once and went around. Margaret's hand stayed on the wheel. The officer took a step closer. "If you do not sign," he said, "you are refusing a lawful order." "I'm not refusing," she said. This was a moment when a simple stop shifted. Officer Hargrove reached in and touched her wrist. Margaret pulled her hand back. "I don't consent," she said. The officer said, "Stop resisting." "I am not resisting," she said. He grabbed her arm again. A neighbor named Thomas Reed had stepped onto his porch. He watched from across the street. He later said the voices were calm at first. The second cruiser arrived. Officer Kyle Benton stepped out. "What's going on?" he asked. "She won't sign," Officer Hargrove said. "I want to read it," Margaret said. Officer Benton moved closer to the open door. "Ma'am," he said, "just sign and this is over." Margaret shook her head. "No," she said, "I want to read it." This was still a low moment. Words, hands, space closing in. Then the officer reached again. Margaret's arm moved. The pen dropped. "Stop resisting," Officer Hargrove said again. The body camera shook. This was the high moment shown at the start. The moment people would watch again and again. After that moment, things did not return to simple. But before the cuffs, before the shouting, before the charges, there was a life that moved in patterns. Margaret had raised 2 children. Both lived in other states. She volunteered at the community center once a week. She baked bread for neighbors during the holidays. She believed in kindness because it made life smoother. Officer Hargrove had his own pattern. He had been written up once for language in a report. He had been cleared. He had never faced a lawsuit. He believed in control because it made his job feel safer. When the pen hit the ground, both beliefs met. Officer Benton reached in from the passenger side. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle," he said. "I'm scared," Margaret said. "No emotions," the reports would later say. But fear has a shape even when voices are flat. Margaret unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. "Hands where I can see them," Officer Hargrove said. Her hands were shaking now, but they stayed visible. She tried to step out. Officer Hargrove pulled her arm. "Stop resisting," he said again. "I'm not," she said. This was the next extreme moment. A crowd had formed. 3 people, then 5. Phones were out. Someone said, "She's old." Someone else said, "Just sign." Officer Benton turned toward the crowd. "Step back," he said. Margaret's foot caught on the doorframe. She stumbled. Officer Hargrove held her tighter. The body camera caught the sound of her shoe scraping the pavement. This chapter does not end with answers. It ends with motion. Officer Hargrove moved to put cuffs on her wrists. Margaret's balance shifted. The crowd leaned in. The camera tilted down. And then, on a quiet street in Cedar Falls, with an $80 ticket still unsigned, Margaret Lewis began to fall. Margaret's knee hit the pavement first. The sound was dull and sharp at the same time. Her hands were still held behind her. The officer's grip did not loosen. The body camera tilted and showed the ground, the edge of the curb, and part of her shoe. "Stop resisting," Officer Hargrove said. "I am not," Margaret said. Officer Benton moved closer. He took hold of Margaret's other arm. Together, they pulled her upright. Her back was bent forward. Her feet slid instead of stepping. "Stand up," Officer Benton said. "I'm trying," Margaret said. This was the high point that followed the fall. People would later slow this moment down. Frame by frame, sound by sound. A woman from across the street, Linda Carver, spoke loudly. "She's not fighting you," she said. Officer Hargrove turned his head. "Step back," he said. Linda did not move. Another phone was raised. A car stopped at the end of the block. Margaret was turned toward the cruiser. Her hands were pressed together behind her back. The metal cuffs were open now. I didn't do anything, Margaret said. Officer Hargrove said nothing. He focused on her wrists. The cuffs closed. The click was clear. This was another extreme moment. The ticket was still not signed. The reason for the stop had not changed. But the situation had moved far beyond a traffic stop. Officer Benton opened the back door of the cruiser. Sit, he said. Margaret tried to lower herself. Her knees did not bend the way they used to. The seat was high. Help me, she said. Officer Hargrove pushed her shoulder. She sat, but not fully. Her legs were still outside. Put your feet in, Officer Benton said. Margaret lifted one foot, then the other. The door closed. The sound was final. This was the low moment that followed. The street went quiet again. The lights still flashed. The crowd stayed, but no one spoke. Officer Hargrove walked back to his cruiser. He wrote something on his pad. His body camera was still on. Officer Benton stood by the rear door. Margaret sat inside. Her hands were cuffed. Her glasses were crooked. She looked straight ahead. She thought about her house 2 blocks away. She thought about the groceries she had planned to buy. She thought about the papers she had not read. Minutes passed. Officer Hargrove returned to the rear door. You are being detained, he said. For what? Margaret asked. Failure to comply, he said. I was asking to read, she said. You refused a lawful order, he said. This was the explanation given. Short, direct. Officer Hargrove shut the door again. Officer Benton spoke quietly. Let's move, he said. The cruiser pulled away from Juniper Ridge Drive. Neighbors watched it go. The drive to the station took 8 minutes. Inside the car, the camera showed the cage, the seat, and Margaret's face. Her breathing was steady. She did not speak. At the station, the cruiser stopped. The door opened. Step out, Officer Benton said. Margaret tried to move. Her legs were stiff. Officer Benton held her elbow. Officer Hargrove took the other side. They walked her inside. This was another low moment. Hallways, fluorescent lights, a desk with a computer. A third officer, Sergeant Paul Mendez, looked up. What happened? He asked. Traffic stop, Officer Hargrove said. Refused to sign. Sergeant Mendez looked at Margaret. How old are you? He asked. 65, she said. He nodded once. Sit her here, he said. Margaret was placed on a bench. The cuff stayed on. A camera in the corner watched. Officer Hargrove filled out a form. What's your name? He asked. Margaret Lewis, she said. Address? She gave it. Any medical issues? He asked. My knees, she said. He wrote something down. This was still low. Paper. Keys. Clicking sounds. Sergeant Mendez stepped away to make a call. Officer Benton stood near the wall. Minutes passed again. Margaret shifted on the bench. The cuffs pressed into her wrists. Can I call my son? She asked. Later, Officer Hargrove said. Sergeant Mendez came back. We're charging her with resisting, he said. Margaret looked up. I didn't resist, she said. That's what the report says, he said. This was another rise, a new charge, a new path. Officer Hargrove printed papers. You'll need to sign these, he said. Margaret looked at him. Can I read them? She asked. There was a pause. Sergeant Mendez watched. Officer Hargrove slid the papers across the desk. You can read, he said. Margaret read slowly, line by line. She signed. The irony was not spoken. After more time, the cuffs were removed. Margaret was released with a court date. A neighbor came to pick her up. The station door closed behind her. This could have ended here. A charge, a fine, a quiet return home. But it did not. 2 days later, Margaret's wrists were bruised. Her knee was swollen. She went to a clinic. A nurse asked questions. Notes were written. A week later, a copy of the body camera video appeared online. It was short. It started with the ticket. It ended with the fall. It did not show everything. The video spread. Comments followed. Questions followed. Then a letter arrived at the police department. It asked for records. It asked for training logs. It asked for past complaints. Sergeant Mendez read it twice. Officer Hargrove was called into an office. "Have you ever had issues like this?" the sergeant asked. "No," Officer Hargrove said. The department said it would review the incident. This was the low before the next high. Margaret received a call from a man named Jonathan Price. He said he was an attorney. He said he had seen the video. "I just want to talk," he said. Margaret agreed. They met in a small office with a flag on the wall. Jonathan asked questions. Margaret answered. He listened. At the end, he said, "There may be more here." Margaret did not respond. Outside, a reporter waited across the street. The story was starting to grow. Back at the department, Officer Hargrove was told his body camera footage would be reviewed again, frame by frame. A supervisor paused the video at the moment Margaret fell. "Go back," he said. The screen froze. The room went quiet. That was the extreme moment that closed this chapter, because what they saw next would change how this case moved forward, and nothing would stay small again. The screen stayed frozen the moment Margaret's foot slipped. Sergeant Mendez leaned closer to the monitor. The room was small. The blinds were half closed. The sound of the air unit filled the silence. "Play again," he said. The video moved forward. Slow, clear, the officer's hand, Margaret's arm, the pull, the stumble. "Pause," the sergeant said. The image stopped again. This was a high moment inside the department. Not loud, not public, but heavy. Officer Hargrove stood behind the sergeant. His arms were crossed. "She resisted," Hargrove said. "She pulled away." The sergeant did not answer. He rewound the video and played it at normal speed. On the screen, Margaret's voice was steady. "I am not resisting." The words were clear. The sergeant wrote something on a notepad. "This review is not finished," he said. "You're on desk duty for now." Officer Hargrove nodded once. He did not argue. Outside that room, the story was moving faster. The video had been shared thousands of times. Short clips, long clips, still images. People slowed it down. People circled moments in red. Margaret did not watch the video. She sat at her kitchen table. Her knee was wrapped. Her wrists still hurt when she turned them. Jonathan Price sat across from her with a folder. "They will say you resisted," he said. "They will say this was standard." "I know," Margaret said. "We will ask questions," he said. She nodded. This was a low moment. Paper, coffee cups, quiet talk. Jonathan filed a request for records, training manuals, use of force rules, past complaints. It was all legal, all slow. At the same time, the city's legal office opened its own file. Emails were sent. "Do we have exposure here?" "Wait for internal review." Officer Benton was called in next. He sat in the same chair Officer Hargrove had sat in. "Did she resist?" the supervisor asked. "She pulled her arm back," Benton said. "Did she strike you?" "No." "Did she try to run?" "No." "Did she threaten you?" "No." The supervisor wrote again. This was another low moment. Answers without tone. A week later, Margaret went to court for the resisting charge. The room was plain. A flag, a seal on the wall. The prosecutor read the charge. Margaret stood. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. "Not guilty," she said. The judge nodded. A new date was set. Outside the courtroom, a reporter asked a question. "Do you feel mistreated?" the reporter asked. "I just wanted to read the paper," Margaret said. That clip spread too. The city council held a closed meeting. Names were not released. Voices were raised behind doors. "This could get expensive," someone said. "Let the process work," someone else said. Officer Hargrove returned to desk duty. He filed reports. He avoided the break room. Officer Benton stayed on patrol. This was the low stretch before the next rise. Then Jonathan Price filed a civil lawsuit. The words were formal. The claims were clear. Unlawful detention, excessive force, violation of rights. The amount was not listed yet. The city responded with a short statement. "We deny wrongdoing." Margaret's name was now tied to a case number. The police department released a longer video. It showed more time before the fall. It showed less after. People noticed what was missing. Another video appeared. This one was from a neighbor's phone. It showed the fall from a different angle. The knee, the pull, the crowd sound. This was another high moment. The city's insurance carrier asked for a briefing. Worst case scenario, they asked. The answer was not given out loud. At the station, Sergeant Mendez received an email marked urgent. Officer Hargrove prior complaint. Locate file. Mendez opened a cabinet. He pulled a thin folder. Inside was a note from 3 years earlier. A traffic stop. A complaint. No discipline. Case closed. Mendez sat back. This was a quiet but extreme moment. A pattern hinted at but not confirmed. Jonathan met Margaret again. They will try to settle, he said. I don't want money, she said. I know, he said, but this will move forward either way. Depositions were scheduled. Dates were set months away. Officer Hargrove was notified he would be questioned under oath. He read the notice twice. The city hired outside counsel. The tone changed. Limit statements. Refer media to legal. The resisting charge against Margaret was quietly dropped. No announcement was made. This was another rise. Small but important. People noticed. Why drop it if it was valid? Someone asked online. No answer came. Margaret returned to her routine. Slowly, she drove again. She stopped fully at every sign. At night, she replayed the moment in her head. The pen falling. The grip. The ground. Jonathan told her not to talk about the case publicly anymore. She agreed. Months passed. Then a judge ruled the lawsuit could move forward. The order was short. The meaning was not. The city's risk team met again. This could go to trial, someone said. What about bond? Another asked. The number discussed was high. At the police department, Officer Hargrove was placed on administrative leave. He was told not to discuss the case. He cleaned out his locker. The next extreme moment came without warning. A document was filed with the court late on a Friday afternoon. It requested a $5 million bond to secure potential damages. The amount spread fast. Phones rang. Emails flooded in. The city manager called an emergency meeting. Margaret received a call from Jonathan. They filed for bond, he said. She sat down. How much? She asked. $5 million, he said. She did not respond. The bond request landed on the judge's desk early Monday morning. $5 million. The number sat on the page without explanation, but everyone understood what it meant. If granted, the city would have to secure that amount while the case moved forward. It was not a fine. It was protection against a possible loss. The judge scheduled a hearing. The city's legal team met in a conference room with glass walls. Papers were spread across the table. A screen showed still images from the body camera video. This sets a tone, one attorney said. It tells the court this is serious, another said. The city manager joined by phone. We need to control risk, he said. No one answered right away. Across town, Margaret sat in Jonathan Price's office again. The same chair, the same desk. What does the bond hearing mean? She asked. It means they're worried, Jonathan said. It doesn't mean we've won. Margaret nodded. This was a low moment. Waiting. Calendars. Silence between calls. Officer Hargrove sat at home. His badge was locked in a drawer at the station. He had been told not to wear his uniform in public. He watched the news without sound. His name appeared on the screen under a still image from the video. He turned the TV off. Officer Benton was also notified he would be questioned again, this time by lawyers, not supervisors. He read the email twice. The department sent out a general message reminding officers to follow protocol during traffic stops. It did not mention names. The bond hearing arrived. The courtroom was full. Reporters sat in the back. Margaret sat beside Jonathan. She wore a plain jacket. Her hands were folded. Across the room, city attorneys sat with binders stacked high. The judge entered. Arguments were short and careful. Jonathan spoke first. He described the stop, the ticket, the request to read, the fall. He referenced the video. He referenced Margaret's age. He did not raise his voice. The city responded. They said the amount was excessive. They said the officer acted within training. They said the case was not decided yet. The judge listened. No decision was made that day. The hearing ended. This was another low moment. No answers, just more waiting. Outside, reporters asked questions. Jonathan declined. Margaret walked to her car with help from a friend. 2 days later, the judge issued a written order. The bond was granted, not the full amount, but close enough to shock the city. The number spread fast. The city council held another emergency meeting. This one lasted hours. "We can't ignore this," someone said. "We can't admit fault," someone else said. The police chief spoke. "We follow a policy," he said. "Then why are we here?" a council member asked. No one answered. The city's insurance carrier raised concerns. Coverage limits, exposure, public pressure. This was a high moment that pushed the case forward. Margaret received another call from Jonathan. "They're going to want to talk settlement," he said. "I want the truth," she said. "I know," he said again. Depositions began. Officer Benton testified first. He sat at a long table. A recorder was turned on. "Did you see her strike anyone?" Jonathan asked. "No," Benton said. "Did she attempt to flee?" Jonathan asked. "No." "Why did you use force?" Jonathan asked. "She didn't comply," Benton said. "What did noncompliance look like?" Jonathan asked. "She didn't sign," Benton said. Jonathan paused. This was a low but important moment. Words placed on record. Officer Hargrove's deposition came next. He sat straight. His answers were short. "She resisted," he said. "How?" Jonathan asked. "She pulled away," Hargrove said. "Did she threaten you?" Jonathan asked. "No." "Did she have a weapon?" Jonathan asked. "No." The room stayed quiet. Later, Margaret testified. She described her routine. The stop, the paper, the pen. "I wanted to read," she said. "Did you resist?" Jonathan asked. "No," she said. This was steady, clear, outside the legal process. More records came in. Training slides, internal emails, use of force charts. One email stood out. It was sent months before the stop. It discussed command presence during minor violations. Jonathan flagged it. At the department, Sergeant Mendez was questioned about past complaints. He referenced the old file again. "It was closed," he said. "Why?" a lawyer asked. "No violation found," he said. The lawyer nodded and wrote. Another low moment. Then another video surfaced. This one was longer. It showed Officer Hargrove after the arrest, speaking to Officer Benton near the cruiser. The audio was faint but clear enough. "She should have just signed," Hargrove said. "That's all," Benton replied. The clip was shared. This became another high moment. The city issued a statement saying the clip was taken out of context. Few accepted that explanation. Pressure grew. The police chief announced an internal policy review. Training would be updated. This was a shift, even if it was framed as routine. Margaret was asked if she wanted to speak at a community forum. She declined. Jonathan advised her to stay quiet. Weeks passed. Settlement talks began behind closed doors. Numbers were discussed, but not agreed upon. The bond stayed in place. Officer Hargrove received notice that internal discipline was being considered. The letter was careful. It did not promise anything. He read it slowly. This was the low before another rise. Then the judge scheduled a date to rule on key evidence admissibility. If allowed, certain videos and emails would be shown at trial. Both sides prepared. The night before the ruling, the city's lead attorney sent an urgent message. "We need to reassess our position." The next morning, the courtroom filled again. The judge took the bench. The room went quiet. He began to speak. This is where Chapter 4 ends. Because the ruling he was about to give would decide what the jury would see. And once those doors opened, the case could no longer be controlled. The judge ruled that the videos would be allowed. The body camera footage, the neighbor's phone recording, the audio captured after the arrest. All of it. The ruling was brief. The impact was not. The courtroom stayed quiet as the judge finished speaking. The city's attorneys did not react. Jonathan Price wrote a note and slid it toward Margaret. "They can't hide it now," it read. Margaret nodded once. This was a high moment, one that shifted leverage. Outside the courtroom, the city's legal team met in a hallway. "This changes everything," one attorney said. "We need to talk numbers," another replied. Back at City Hall, phones rang without pause. The mayor was briefed. The city manager asked for updated projections. The bond still stood. The risk had grown. At the police department, the chief called a closed-door meeting with senior staff. "We are not discussing guilt," he said. "We are discussing impact." No one argued. Officer Hargrove was informed of the ruling by email. He read it on his phone. He did not respond. Officer Benton was also notified. He closed the message and went back to work. The trial date was set. Jury selection would begin in weeks. Margaret returned home that afternoon. She sat at her kitchen table and drank tea. Her knee still ached when it rained. Jonathan called later. "They want mediation," he said. "When?" she asked. "Soon," he said. This was a low moment. Quiet. Waiting again. Mediation took place in a private building. No cameras. No public seats. Margaret sat in one room with Jonathan. The city's representatives sat in another. A mediator moved between rooms. Numbers were written, erased, written again. The first offer was low. Jonathan rejected it without discussion. The second offer was higher. Jonathan asked Margaret what she wanted. "I want it to stop happening," she said. The mediator nodded. The city asked for a pause. Outside that process, more information came out. A local paper published a long report on traffic stops involving elderly drivers. Patterns were discussed. Statistics were shown. The story grew wider than Margaret. This was another high moment. The city council faced public comment. Residents spoke. Some supported the police. Some did not. Margaret did not attend. The mediator returned with a new offer. It was higher again. Jonathan leaned back. "This is moving," he said. Margaret said nothing. Then the city added conditions. No admission of wrongdoing. Confidential terms. Policy review language. Jonathan asked for time. They stepped into the hallway. "They're trying to limit fallout," he said. "I don't want silence," Margaret said. Jonathan nodded. This was the low before the next push. Back in the room, Jonathan made a counteroffer. The number was large. The terms were clear. The mediator left again. Hours passed. Finally, the mediator returned. "They're willing to agree to the amount," he said. "They want final language." Margaret looked at Jonathan. He met her eyes. "This is significant," he said. The number discussed was close to the bond amount. Not announced. Not yet. This was another high point, but unfinished. Before anything was signed, the city requested one more meeting. This time with the judge. They wanted guidance. The meeting was granted. The judge listened to both sides. "This case will go to trial if you don't resolve it," he said. "The evidence will be public." That was all he said. The message was clear. Back at mediation, the final offer was placed on the table. The amount was $5 million. The room went quiet. The bond would be converted. The case would end, but only if terms were accepted. Margaret closed her eyes for a moment. Jonathan waited. "This is the outcome," he said softly. She opened her eyes. "I want training changes in writing," she said. The mediator nodded and wrote. The city agreed. Signatures were prepared. Pens were placed on the table. Margaret looked at the paper. The same motion as before. Reading, line by line. No one rushed her. This moment was deliberate. She signed. The city signed. The mediator collected the documents. This was the highest moment of the case, so far, the one the title promised. But it did not end here, because the settlement did not erase what had already happened. The city released a statement hours later. The matter has been resolved without admission of liability. The amount was confirmed. $5 million. The bond was lifted. Officer Hargrove was notified the same day. His employment status would be reviewed separately. He sat alone when he read it. At the department, officers whispered. Some defended him. Some did not. Training memos were issued. Margaret received calls she did not answer. Jonathan told her to rest. That night, she sat on her porch. The street was quiet again. Juniper Ridge Drive looked the same. But it was not. The settlement became public the next morning. $5 million. No admission of wrongdoing. Policy review promised. Training updates required. The city moved fast to close the file. Margaret's name appeared in headlines for 1 week, then slowly disappeared. The news cycle moved on. Another story took its place. But inside the police department, the case was not over. Officer Daniel Hargrove was called in for a final review. The meeting took place in a plain office with no windows. 2 supervisors sat across from him. A folder rested on the table. "This is an administrative matter," one supervisor said. Hargrove nodded. They reviewed the incident again. The stop, the ticket, the refusal to sign, the physical contact, the fall. They reviewed the training manual, the updated language, the new guidance that now existed because of the case. "You escalated a minor stop," the supervisor said. Hargrove did not respond. "You used force where time could have been used," the other supervisor said. Hargrove looked down. The decision was delivered in writing. Officer Daniel Hargrove was terminated from the department. The reason listed was failure to follow de-escalation policy. No press conference was held. Officer Benton received a different outcome. He was required to complete additional training. He remained on duty. Sergeant Mendez was reassigned to a non-supervisory role. These decisions were internal. They were not announced publicly. The department released a short statement saying staffing changes were part of routine review. Margaret learned about the termination from Jonathan. "They closed it quietly," he said. She nodded. The funds from the settlement were processed through accounts and paperwork. Taxes were addressed. Fees were deducted. Margaret did not change her lifestyle. She paid off her house. She donated part of the money to a local legal aid group. She funded a small scholarship at the community center where she once volunteered. She did not move away. She stayed on Juniper Ridge Drive. The city installed new stop sign reflectors at the corner of East Maple. The police department updated its traffic stop policy for elderly drivers. Officers were instructed to allow time, to explain documents, to avoid physical contact unless there was clear danger. New recruits watched the body camera footage during training. The clip was labeled case study. No names were mentioned. Margaret was never invited to speak at the academy. She was fine with that. Months passed. The resisting charge that once appeared on her record was formally expunged. The paperwork arrived in the mail. She placed it in a drawer. Life returned to routine. Oatmeal in the morning, tea in the afternoon, short drives to the store. When she saw police lights behind her one day, her hands tightened on the wheel. The cruiser passed her and kept going. Nothing happened. That was enough. Jonathan Price closed the case file. He kept one copy of the settlement agreement in storage. He used the case in lectures without names. "This is what escalation looks like," he would say. The city moved on. Budgets were adjusted. Insurance premiums increased. The bond became a reference point in internal risk discussions. $5 million was not forgotten in City Hall. Officer Hargrove applied for work outside law enforcement. His applications did not list the termination reason in detail. Some employers asked questions. Some did not call back. He left the state a year later. No one followed. Margaret continued to live quietly. People in the neighborhood treated her the same. Some nodded more often. Some avoided the subject entirely. She did not bring it up. One afternoon, a young officer knocked on her door. He stood on the porch with his hands visible. "Ma'am," he said, "I just want to say thank you." "For what?" Margaret asked. "For reminding us to slow down," he said. She nodded once. The door closed. The story did not end with applause. It did not end with celebration. It ended with changes written into policy, money moved through accounts, and one lesson left behind. The moment meant to be small can grow when power is rushed. That patience costs nothing. That reading before signing should never be treated as resistance. on Juniper Ridge Drive. Traffic still slowed at the corner. The stop sign was fully visible now, and no one forgot what happened there.